Hey Albert, what you doing?
I'm building a city for my minifigs.
Oh, a city. So, what are the key things in your city?
The houses, because everybody deserves a place to stay where they can feel safe.
So well, I agree with that. That's really important. Everyone deserves a home. You know, we live in Singapore where not everyone has been able to afford a home.
Why is all the homes so expensive and take so long to build now?
You know, Albert, that is actually a much deeper question than you might even think. So let me explain. Hi, welcome back. We're here at Rivervale Shores. It's one of the newest BTO projects, as it turns out, in Sengkang, the GRC that's represented by the Workers' Party. Residents at this estate are just collecting their keys, but many of us may be aware that there has been a long gestation period, 6 years for many families. Part of the reason, of course, was due to COVID, but part of the reason was due to a supply shortfall that has blighted the entire island. We're here to think more carefully about the existing public housing model, of how the HDB builds, prices, and sells, and to ask, is there an alternative way? The first point to think about is how we build. The current model for HDB is a build-to-order model, where HDB, in theory, would only build the required number of units when there's a clear, sufficient demand. We think that this existing model is not entirely fit for purpose. One reason was revealed by COVID-19. Of course, nobody anticipated COVID-19 and the kind of shock that it would imply. But what that did was it led to long waits of an additional 3, 4, or even 5 years for some households. We think that the government can do more in terms of building in advance. After all, household formation is largely predictable. Likewise, the population growth rate is also reasonably predictable. And of course, the government holds the levers for immigration, which therefore renders that also predictable. Even if we end up with an oversupply, the government is the one that takes on the burden of this additional stock, rather than to transfer the risk entirely to homeowners who are less able to bear the shock. Another question we can ask ourselves is how we price. Why is it that land is so expensive? As it turns out, we believe that this is because of a belief by this government that land must be priced entirely according to market principles. The challenge here, of course, is that there's no single one market for land. Land has many uses, just like how the government already prices land for commercial uses, as well as non-commercial uses differentially. The government can also consider of all the spillover benefits that exist for pricing public housing land at a sufficiently cheaper discount relative to how they price commercial land. This will ensure that the price of land doesn't get too far ahead of affordability and ultimately keeps the price of HDB flats affordable. The third question we need to ask ourselves is how we sell. Since 1964, when HDB began the process of selling flats directly to the public, the model has been one where sales were for 99-year leases. Now, the government had good intentions at the time. It wanted to encourage a sense of home ownership and rootedness to Singapore during our nation-building phase. But times have changed, and the expectations and aspirations of our people have likewise evolved. Is that 99-year model still fit for purpose? Well, we know that young people may be much more open to alternative models, such as an extended rent. And indeed, HDB has already recognized this possibility. The Flexi model currently allows those above the age of 55 to purchase flats in 5-year increments up to the age of 95. Hence, it's entirely possible for those who are relatively older to buy a short lease term and prepay that for their housing. Alternative lease durations are not limited to the flexi model. In the most recent Amokyo SIRS exercise, it was the case that the government allowed for up to a 50-year lease period so that the headline price of purchase of those units would be more affordable. This shorter lease period is something that could be extended to a broader range of configurations, not just those apartments that are affected by SIRS buyouts. And finally, of course, many of us that are younger may be much more open to the idea of rentals. But rental in the open market is often unaffordable. Is it possible for the government to have a public rental scheme that is expanded, that might include the possibility of larger format homes rather than the smaller format ones that are currently available? In our next episode, join me as well as my colleague, Louis, as we look at alternative models for Singapore housing in the 21st century. So here, what we're going to do is to try to put forward some of the Workers' Party solutions to the HDB problem.